About a year ago, I did a video applying the Bechdel Test to the MCU. Unfortunately, I could not apply it to the Incredible Hulk movie or the Spider-Man movies at the time. So, 1 year later, I decided to do another Bechdel Test video, this time focusing heavily on the Hulk and Spider-Man movies. In this video, I will cover Ang Lee's Hulk movie, the movie with Abomination, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the MCU Spider-Man, and Into the Spider-Verse for good measure. Now, because I'm lazy, I'm just going to do a recap of what the Bechdel Test is using footage from my previous video. I am splitting up this video into sections, so if you have already seen the MCU video and don't wish to watch the exact same thing again, you should know the timestamp to skip to. Anyway,
to those of you who do not know,
the Bechdel Test is a basic test assessing representation of women in movies. In order to pass the Bechdel Test, your movie must do 3 things. 1. Have more than one woman. 2. Have them talk to each other.
What is Media Dunce talking about? He's interested in the MCU and how those movies pass the Bechdel Test.
3. About something other than a man.
Do you think I should revert back to green and gold? Why? It's your own style. It makes you stand out.
Of course, when watching Iron Man, I realized there may be a bit of gray area involved, such as a conversation mostly about a man, but a small portion of it can be argued as something about something else. In such cases, I'll label the conversation as debatable, meaning I'll leave it to you as to whether a given conversation passes the Bechdel test. Whether or not the Bechdel test is a good test for measuring the representation of women or not, that's up to you. Personally, I feel that it is a bare minimum, so I'm going to go ahead and offer a grading scale. A, if the movie has 5 conversations that clearly pass the Bechdel test. B, if the movie has 3 clear Bechdel passing conversations. C, if the movie has 1 clear conversation that passes the Bechdel test. D, if the movie has no clear conversation, but at least 1 conversation that is marked as debatable. F, if the movie does not pass the Bechdel test
in any way.
The conversations have to be distinct, meaning I can easily tell when one ends and the other begins.
I'm really glad you upgraded your avatar.
I'm just gonna come out and say it. It did not pass the Bechdel test
In any way.
The only major female in this movie is Betty, and she mainly interacts with her father, Bruce's father, Bruce, and that one guy who has got to be the biggest idiot in movie history. Yeah, this movie also did not pass the Bechdel test either. The closest I could find was Betty Ross talking to a friend while Bruce was stalking her. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch what they were saying, so it doesn't count. Again, like in the MCU video, I need to verify what they were talking about. If someone does know what they were talking about and it does pass the Bechdel test, let me know in the comment section down below and
I'll tweet about it.
Well, the Hulk movies didn't do too well. So I covered the 2 Hulk movies, and I'm not covering that Jimmy Neutron episode that partially parodies the first Hulk movie. So on to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. In Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film, released back in 2002, I actually did catch one exchange that by my standard passes the Bechdel test.
Was it between Mary Jane and Aunt May?
You would think, but I paid close attention to the scenes in which they both appeared. Jane said goodbye to May at the end of that Thanksgiving scene, but May returned no dialogue, so it doesn't count. They were also talking to each other and some other man, and I couldn't tell what they were saying. And if I can't tell what they were saying, I can't give it credit. The scene I'm talking about occurs a little over 20 minutes into the movie, where Mary Jane was invited into a car by her friends. I didn't catch much, but there was an exchange that was man-free, so it counts.
Do you really want to boost this movie's score from an F to a C? We basically got crumbs.
Well, it was a crummy exchange, but an exchange nonetheless. Almost 24 minutes in, there is a brief exchange between Mary Jane and a fellow actress, who comments that Jane looks jittery and Jane responds that you never know what might happen. On the surface, this small exchange clearly passes the Bechdel test. However, when taken into context, Jane was arguably thinking about Peter watching her performance, so I'm going to mark it as debatable. Later, during her actual performance, they are clearly talking about some male character in the play, so the last debatable exchange took place during the scene where Dr. Octopus abducts Aunt May. Two women were talking about a credit card. I couldn't verify if both women were talking or just one, so I'm gonna give this exchange the benefit of the doubt and mark it as debatable. Around 6 minutes and 45 seconds into the film, there were two girls complimenting Mary Jane's performance and singing. This counts as it is two women clearly not talking about a man.
What are their names?
We don't know.
You know, some people claim that the women have to be named in order for it to count. Otherwise, movies could easily pass the test just by having female extras talk amongst a crowd about anything, thus not putting in any of the work.
Well, even with this benefit of the doubt, these movies just barely scraped by, and by my grading scale, don't get an A or a B. In any case, we still have the Amazing Spider-Man films, the MCU Spider-Man films, and Into the Spider-Verse. Odds are, one of those films are bound to do better.
Gotta do better, Senator.
Okay. Even after taking a second viewing of that dinner scene where Gwen and her mother are present, I couldn't find any exchange that would satisfy the Bechdel test. If you know of such a conversation, respectfully leave a comment about it down below and
I'll tweet about it.
This movie actually did the best so far. I counted two exchanges that clearly passed the Bechdel test. The first occurred after 16 minutes into the movie, where Gwen's mom told her about a family photo, and she responded that she'll be available shortly. The second exchange also occurred with Gwen, and another woman before the former was scheduled to have her last Oxford interview. The woman asks Gwen if she should take Gwen upstairs, and Gwen answers affirmatively. I'll admit, those are the only two conversations I caught, and I keep getting the nagging sense that a couple exchanges escaped my notice. Anyway, back to the MCU. In this film, I found two conversations worth looking at. The first exchange is between Liz, Peter's love interest before he decided to go all Sheriff of Nottingham on her dad, and a fellow colleague. The exchange is short, but the girl offers salutation to Liz, who responds affirmatively.
What was the girl's name?
I'm not sure.
Then can we really count it? I just double-checked what the Bechdel test was, and apparently, each character needs to have a name known to the audience.
I thought we just went over this. Besides, notice that even when we remove this naming restriction, the movies thus far don't really do that well regardless. Anyway, the second conversation took place after Peter enthusiastically did his duty to Prince John. We catch another conversation, this time between Betty and Liz, as the latter was getting ready to move to Oregon. Betty glumly states that she'll miss Liz, and Liz simply responds with bye. Yeah, I took a second look at the calm before the water elemental attack storm, and the scene where characters are hiding behind a vault and confessing their secrets. I have not caught any women talk to each other, and as far as I can tell, the movie does not pass the Bechdel test.
In any way.
As usual, if anyone does know of such an exchange,
I'll tweet about it.
This movie, to my surprise, also does not seem to pass the Bechdel test in any way that I could tell. With that said, I don't wish to end this video bashing Into the Spider-Verse, a movie that not only I enjoy, but is pretty popular amongst the fanbase, not to mention my fear of this video getting pounded with dislikes. Even though Spider-Verse doesn't pass the Bechdel test, one might argue that it does represent women better than some of the movies in this video that do pass the Bechdel test. And that's because the Bechdel test is only one way of assessing female representation of movies. Since most of these movies have at least 2 female characters, it wouldn't be hard for directors to have them talk to each other about some non-male related topic, and then disregard their development as characters immediately afterwards. Such a movie may pass the Bechdel test, but would it represent women well? And I reckon most people watching this, would say no. What Into the Spider-Verse did well was include female versions of Spider-Man from alternate universes, and give them their moments to shine. Even Aunt May was more badass than usual. It's just that the Bechdel test wasn't satisfied, and it is not the end-all be-all of female representation in movies. But, with all of that said, are there any exchanges in these movies that I missed? Are there any exchanges I mentioned that maybe shouldn't pass the test? Should I continue a Bechdel test series of videos, and if so, which franchise should I target next?
Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below and subscribe to Media Dunce.
And if any of these comments refer to the Bechdel exchanges that I missed,
I'll tweet about it.